It's not about buying a new knife set, and it's not about having all the top-notch materials and equipment. It's about just understanding intellectually how food works.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary. Welcome to the Secretary Kennedy Podcast. My guest today is America's chef, Andrew Gruel. And Andrew has been one of the great proponents for eating real food in this country and for cutting through the complexity of the food system and explaining to Americans what the source of their food is. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Talk about what your journey has been.
So for me...
by the way, we're in Huntington Beach, California at Andrew's house today.
Yes.
And we just cooked an incredible meal for our new The Real Food show. And you'll see when you watch it why Andrew is such a superstar. We cooked a salmon meal, salmon cake meal for $5 using fresh caught wild caught Alaskan salmon. And you can make the same meal for about $2.50 using canned salmon. Really high quality meal with all the proteins and nutrients we need. But one of the things we're trying to show people is that good food is not more expensive food. It's just smarter.
100%.
And by the way, it only took 12 minutes to make the meal. So
yep. Yeah, 12 minutes. And that's a long 12 minutes. I mean, realistically.
That's faster than driving to the McDonald's.
Yeah. Exactly. So my journey, I grew up in Jersey, and I actually did not have a broad food palate growing up. I was a latchkey kid, right? Both two working parents, microwave generation, started having really bad stomach issues when I was 14 or 15. Never thought it was the food, but I'll get back to that. I went to a small liberal arts college up in Maine, became obsessed with seafood in the coast up there. I was actually studying more environmental literature and kind of social political philosophy, but I was spending most of my time in restaurants working and out at the docks learning about seafood, Maine lobster fisheries, because my stomach was so bad I had to be in one place for long periods of time. Well, the kitchen was perfect for me, 13, 14, 15-hour shifts in one place, and that was it. So after 2 years in college, I actually ended up leaving college and then just taking my journey through the restaurant industry, studying and training all over the country as well as a little bit internationally. And in 2008, when the economy tanked, I was running restaurants in New Jersey at the time, and they actually shut down, and I lost my job. And the only thing that was available in terms of work was granted programs, right? Grant money was still out there. Now, I had since gone back. I had gotten a business degree and a degree in food marketing, food service management, plus had the chef side of things. At the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California, they were looking for a chef with a marketing background to start a sustainable seafood program. They determined that since 80% of the seafood in California is consumed in restaurants, if they could get a chef to train consumers how to buy the right types of seafood with the ultimate goal of increasing our per capita consumption of seafood, then they could start in California and that trend would go nationwide. So I went from running restaurants to being deep inside the world of fisheries management, supply chain management, understanding even marine biology, marine conservation, and hitting the streets and trying to train both chefs and consumers about how to eat the right types of seafood, but eat more types of seafood. And it was an eye-opening experience, but after 3 years of doing that, it was a 3-year program, I said, I'm not going to continue I'm not going to continue trading in nonprofits. I'm going to go out and do it myself. So I maxed out my credit cards. I borrowed money from friends and family. It was about $35,000 at the time. I started a concept called slap fish so fresh it'll slap you, using only local seafood directly from the fishermen. And then I started that with one food truck, and then I grew that into a fast casual location worldwide. And my wife and I sold that. We opened about 45 or 50 locations, and we sold that in 2022. So that was kind of my culinary journey. And all along the way, I did Food Network. And then when the pandemic hit, I started speaking out about more political issues and got dropped from all those, got sued by the state of California, went through my political journey, and here I am.
How did you get sued by the state of California?
Well, I wasn't necessarily sued by the state of California. 6 days after I went on a media tirade saying that Newsom was, my words were, he was an a-hole, we got served a labor investigation by the state of California on 23 different LLCs with my name on it, 11 of which were single-member LLCs with no employees. So it goes to show you.
Warfare.
Yeah. And that went on we spent about $125,000, and that's where there was, counters And ultimately it was dropped. Ironically, or coincidentally, the day the governor's recall was approved was the day our lawsuit was dropped.
So what are you doing now? What are you doing now to promote good food?
So we do videos. Lauren and I, my wife, we have a show called American Gravy, and really I just go on a media tour trying to teach consumers, trying to teach children, trying to teach families how to actually engage with the elements they already have in the kitchen, right? And I say that because it's not about buying a new knife set, and it's not about having all the top-notch materials and equipment. It's about just understanding intellectually how food works. And we know this already innately, right? We know how food works. Food is the great unifier. Every single generation has stories, and all of them are rooted in food. And it's the one language that we can all speak is food, right? If you think about it, our entire world view is shaped by food in some manner or another. And we want to be able to teach people how to wrap their arms around that and embrace food as opposed to being afraid of it and it being an afterthought, whether it's driving through McDonald's, just picking up a bag of chips. Because that's the way in which I grew up. And I loved history and I understood it, but I never knew the role that food had in my life. I should tell you, along that journey, and I mentioned I dropped out of college because of my stomach problems, it wasn't until 2013 or 14 that I cut seed oils and processed food out of my diet that my stomach got healed. Now, this is really interesting, and I've never really elaborated on this story. I didn't cut seed oils out of my diet because I thought, oh, this is gonna heal me. I did it because what I learned when I was working with the aquarium was that we have a seafood deficiency in our diet, which ultimately ends up with an omega-3 and a DHA efficiency. 6 of the 8 leading causes of death at the time, to some degree, could be alleviated through a much more regular, healthy consumption of those omega-3 fatty acids, primarily found in seafood. And so what I was trying to do was to increase my omega-3s, but also decrease my 6s. Because I realized I couldn't eat enough seafood in order to kind of get rid of that imbalance that I constantly talk about, right? I think 100 years ago, our omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, and you may know better than I, was like 3-to-1. And now I think it's 20-to-1. And that's the cause of so much internal inflammation and chronic disease and autoimmune disorders, etc. So me personally trying to focus on my health, when I cut out the seed oils in an attempt to have my 3s take over, and then I stopped. In doing so, I had to stop the processed food. I had to stop the chips, because when you look on a package, you think you're eating nuts. You're eating nuts cooked in canola oil. They're in everything. So when I did that, within 3 to 4 months, my stomach problems were fully healed, 100%. And then my wife Lauren, she did the same thing, like, you know, altering her diet, and she started noticing that it was healing her. So it was at that point that I kind of had a mental change where I realized I need to get more Americans. The one way I can change the world is to actually get more Americans to cook more and eat the right types of food. And in doing so, one of the tertiary effects is that you also now are supporting American ranchers and farmers and fishermen and the real people throughout the entire supply chain that actually make this country run.
You know, the impression is that fast food and ultra-processed foods are cheaper.
Yeah.
Is that true?
No, and I know that because I'm the one who actually buys it and cooks it, and I also did in the past a lot of consulting, especially in that fast casual world. It's not cheaper, right?
You actually worked for Denny's for a while, right?
I did work at Denny's. Wow, you know your stuff. I did, yeah. Moons. I was the king of moons over my hammy, the Della Dinger. So it's not, when you're cooking real food and you're doing it. Let's use beef tallow, for example. That's a hot topic right now. Restaurants say, we can't cook with beef tallow because it costs so much more. Well, the point that I make is that no, it actually doesn't. Because number one, you use less of it. A little bit goes a longer way. It's much more, the flavor isn't stronger. The flavor is cleaner. When you're cooking and frying in canola oil and all these junk oils, number one, you have to replace it consistently. Number two, it breaks down so quickly, which leads to internal oxidation. With beef tallow, I use half the amount that I otherwise would have if I was rolling canola oil on my grill. So when you look at it, it's actually a net zero economically. Higher quality ingredients go further. Even if they cost more, it's a matter of how you utilize them in the kitchen. So that's why I lean into the technique piece, because it's not more expensive to eat the right types of food, whole foods, real foods, American food. It just takes a little bit more effort. But if that effort can ultimately become inexpensive, then we can overcome the battles that we see, especially when it comes to the chronic disease epidemic in America.
What's the most important thing that consumers should understand? What are the best tricks for buying your own food and cooking it?
Buy the cheapest meat at the grocery store, whatever's on sale. Typically, the most flavorful cuts of meat are the offcuts that everybody doesn't like. We never eat ribeye, filet, or strip steak here. We always eat flat iron, cuts from the shoulder, Denver steaks. We eat the skirt steak, the flat steak, the hanger steak, oxtail, the meats that braise and break down. Chefs know those are the most flavorful cuts of meat because they have all that beautiful connective tissue. It's all the flavor, but you need time to be able to break it down and braise it and cook it slowly so it's meltingly tender. But you can just plug in a crock pot nowadays and do it. We have the tools to be able to do this. So I buy the cheapest cuts of meat. I buy the underutilized offcuts of seafood. Seafood I've never heard of. If you've never heard of it, it's probably caught locally because we have labeling standards when it comes to seafood in the United States. In a lot of the imported seafood, they can call it catfish up to a couple of years ago, right? When they're dropping pangasius or swai onto the market, the Vietnamese catfish farmers. But you want to buy the American catfish right here or some of the other underutilized species of seafood. And then when it comes to cooking fats, right? First, make your own cooking fats. I rarely do buy beef tallow. Instead, I use the fat that's already inherent in the meat that I'm cooking because that fat actually cooks the meat and gives it a better sear. Anytime I cook bacon, I always keep my bacon fat at all times. And then when it comes to making vinaigrettes, sauces, condiments, make them yourself at home. It's always less expensive. 2 eggs right now and a little bit of avocado oil, a dash of Dijon mustard, and a lemon is going to cost you $3.25. If I went and bought Chosen Mayo or a name brand avocado oil mayo, or even a Hellman's, which is made with canola oil, it's going to be $9 to $10 volume to volume for the same weight. But it's $3 to $6 less if you make it here at home and takes 15 seconds. It's easy. And if you have kids, that's where you get the kids in the kitchen. These are science experiments. Our kids love being in the kitchen, whipping up mayos, whipping up vinaigrettes, breaking down seafood, breaking down whole fish. And when they cook it, when they prep it, they eat it themselves because they take ownership and they have culinary equity in that dish.
Yeah, I remember when I was growing up, we would make bacon in the morning, but we'd always pour the bacon grease into a coffee can and keep it for later for cooking.
Yeah, we have a mug, but Lauren doesn't let me buy coffee in the can anymore ever since the accident. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking.
And how do we make restaurants? How do we get restaurants to give us the healthiest foods?
You got to continuously ask questions. So if the restaurant knows that the consumers want something, they're always going to make the change. Now that little something might come with a bit of an extra cost, but in the restaurant industry, because of our volume, an extra cost to us, if I added 50 cents to every item on my menu today, I could add 13 to 15% to my bottom line. So if you're willing to pay an extra 50 cents for a restaurant to be using beef tallow, I guarantee you that in the long run, the cost when it comes to healthcare and feeling good is going to outweigh whatever extra cost you could have paid at the time. And I'll use the example of our restaurants. When I realized how much the seed oil change helped me in our restaurants, our seafood restaurants in 17 and 18, we started switching a lot of the oils out. And we started switching to saturated fats as opposed to a lot of the cheap soybean oils, canola oil, vegetable oil, you name it. Customers started coming into the restaurant and saying, how can I eat your fish and chips and I don't even feel as if I ate fish and chips? Like I could run a marathon afterwards. And I explained to them, I said, it's the oil, it's the fats. And we started explaining to them. And I can't really be back. And then the customers would come back and they'd say, I ate fish and chips or I ate fried chicken at this restaurant and I felt like junk. And I tested it. I came back here and I ate it again. Same feeling. Tasted clean. I didn't have that feeling of that heaviness. And once customers started realizing that, we were then able to train a lot of our franchisees at the time, because I had franchised my concept, that, look, that's the value right there. A customer who comes back twice is worth whatever you would spend in marketing to get that customer in once. $500, $1,000, extrapolate that across hundreds of customers. So if I'm asking you to switch over to a tallow or even a mix of a tallow and a pure olive oil in order to maybe have a higher smoke point, I could convince my franchisees to do that, but it took the customers coming in and demanding it. And restaurateurs want that. We don't like Yelp. We love hearing it directly from you. So when you go in and tell a chef or a restaurateur, I would love to see you use this particular product, they'll usually do it as long as enough customers tell you.
Chef Andrew Gruel, thank you very much. America's Chef, very, very grateful to you for your commitment to good food and for your leadership and vision. And thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.